If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. Cortisol is a hormone produced by the adrenal glands that plays a crucial role in various physiological processes. It is often referred to as the stress hormone, but it is probably better labeled as the readiness hormone. In this episode, we discuss the importance of maintaining healthy cortisol levels and how one can affect cortisol levels to age well.
Dr. Armstrong's, for our listeners, what is cortisol and why should we be concerned about it for aging well?
Well, cortisol is a hormone produced by the adrenal glands that plays a crucial role in various physiological processes. While cortisol is essential for certain functions, chronically elevated levels can be detrimental to the effects on the body. It is often referred to as the quote-unquote stress hormone, but it is probably better labeled as the readiness hormone.
Why the readiness hormone?
The label readiness hormone is one I first saw in an article by Christian Turbidoux.
And we will link this in the episode description.
We will. And he refers to it as the readiness hormone because the main purpose of cortisol is to make sure that we can face a potentially threatening situation.
Oh, like a fight or flight response.
That's correct. Cortisol functions to increase wakefulness, focus, energy, and drive by raising epinephrine. In turn, it increases heart contraction strength and rate and muscle contraction strength. It also mobilizes stored energy and helps maintain blood sugar levels. It also inhibits the immune system.
When you say it mobilizes stored energy, this is a non-selective process, meaning that all potential energy sources can be broken down and mobilized by cortisol. This includes muscle and liver glycogen, fatty acid from body fat, and amino acids from muscle tissue.
It does.
If cortisol mobilizes energy, why does it increase belly fat?
As we said, cortisol is often referred to as the stress hormone. This is accurate when one is under chronic stress and cortisol is chronically elevated. Chronically elevated cortisol is associated with the storage of fat, particularly around the abdominal area. There are several reasons for this. Chronically elevated cortisol can increase insulin resistance, making the cells less responsive to insulin. This may lead to higher blood sugar levels and increased fat storage, particularly in the abdominal region. Cortisol is associated with the stimulation of appetite, especially for high-calorie and sugary foods. This can lead to overeating and consequently weight gain, with a preference for abdominal fat storage. Cortisol promotes the enlargement of fat cells in the abdominal area, making them more receptive to storing and retaining fat through a process known as adipogenesis. Cortisol stimulates lipogenesis, which is the process of converting excess calories into fat. This can contribute to the accumulation of fat in the abdominal region. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol levels can lead to changes in metabolic rate and energy expenditure. This can result in an imbalance where more calories are stored as fat, particularly in the abdominal area. Cortisol tends to promote central or visceral obesity, characterized by fat accumulation around the organs in the abdominal cavity. This type of fat is metabolically active and associated with an increased risk of various health issues. Cortisol levels typically follow a circadian rhythm, with higher levels in the morning and lower levels in the evening. Disruption of this rhythm, such as elevated cortisol levels in the evening due to chronic stress, may contribute to abdominal fat deposition.
So the concern is not with cortisol, but with the regulation of cortisol levels.
Cortisol should fluctuate throughout the day, We like to see it rise in the morning and fall at night.
So, cortisol follows a natural circadian rhythm, meaning its levels in the bodies vary throughout the day, typically peaking in the early morning and reaching their lowest point in the evening and during the first half of the night. If this is the body's internal clock and it is response to light and darkness, then a regular sleep pattern is important.
It is. There is a general pattern of how cortisol should cycle throughout the day. Cortisol cycles are typically highest shortly after waking up, typically within the first 30 to 45 minutes of waking. This peak is part of the natural awakening response and helps prepare the body for the challenges of the day. After the morning peak, cortisol levels gradually decline through the day, reaching their lowest point in the evening. Cortisol levels are lowest in the evening, promoting relaxation and preparing the body for sleep. This decline is important for the initiation of the sleep cycle. Cortisol levels continue to be low during the first half of the night and allow for restorative sleep.
I think it's important to note that this general pattern can be influenced by factors such as shift work, irregular sleep patterns, chronic stress, and other lifestyle factors. Disruption to the circadian rhythm of cortisol, such as elevated levels in the evening or during the night, can have a variety of health implications. What can our listeners do to maintain a healthy cortisol rhythm?
Well, like you mentioned, we can begin by establishing a consistent sleep schedule. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, even on weekends, to support a regular cortisol rhythm. Spend time outdoors, especially in the morning, to help regulate your circadian rhythm. Natural light exposure in the morning helps signal the body that it's time to be awake. Reduce or eliminate caffeine and avoid heavy meals close to bedtime to promote relaxation.
I presume that exercise and relaxation are important.
Absolutely. Engaging in relaxation techniques such as meditation, deep breathing, or yoga can help us to manage stress and support a healthy cortisol rhythm. Of course, we stress the importance of incorporating regular physical activity and exercise into one's daily routine, but it's important to avoid intense exercise close to bedtime. Instead, focus on having a relaxing bedtime routine. Establish calming pre-sleep rituals that signal your body that it's time to wind down.
So other than increasing our belly fat, what are the physiological effects of high cortisol?
Chronic exposure to high cortisol levels can suppress the immune system, making it more susceptible to infections and illnesses. Increased cortisol levels can contribute to insulin resistance, leading to higher blood sugar levels. This may contribute to development of metabolic disorders such as diabetes. High cortisol levels can lead to the breakdown of muscle tissue, potentially causing muscle wasting and weakness, something we are trying to reverse as we attempt to age well. In addition, cortisol interferes with the process of bone formation and can lead to decreased bone density, increasing the risk of osteoporosis, another concern for aging.
We've already noted that elevated cortisol can affect our sleep. What about cognitive function?
Well, prolonged exposure to high cortisol levels may affect cognitive function, including memory and concentration. Elevated cortisol levels are also associated with increased feelings of stress, anxiety, and irritability, which over time can contribute to mood disorders.
Cortisol can contribute to higher blood pressure by promoting the retention of sodium and water in the body. Chronically high cortisol levels may also impact the digestive system, leading to increased appetite, overeating, and potential gastrointestinal problems.
In women, high cortisol levels may disrupt the normal menstrual cycle, leading to irregular periods or even amenorrhea. Cortisol can interfere with reproductive hormones, potentially leading to a decreased libido.
These are all physiological effects of chronic high cortisol. It's important for the listeners to note that cortisol has a natural daily rhythm with higher levels in the morning and lower levels in the evening.
Again, we should refer to cortisol as the readiness hormone. Short-term increases in cortisol, known as the fight or flight response, are normal and beneficial for survival. Chronic stress and prolonged elevation of cortisol, however, can contribute to these negative physiological effects. If you suspect that you have elevated cortisol levels or are experiencing persistent symptoms, it's crucial to consult with a healthcare professional for proper evaluation and management.
And given the average unhealthy lifestyle these days, it's probably more likely than not that our cortisol levels are at least a little out of whack. So we've established that maintaining healthy cortisol levels is important for overall well-being, as cortisol is a hormone that plays a crucial role in various bodily functions, including metabolism, immune response, and stress regulation. What are some of the lifestyle and dietary strategies we can take to help manage cortisol levels and age well?
Well, we can begin by getting adequate sleep, having a regular bedtime, and time to get up in the morning. Remember that the regularity of sleep is most important, but we should also shoot for 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Want to practice stress-reducing techniques such as meditation, deep breathing exercises, yoga, or Tai Chi, and engage in activities you enjoy, helping to alleviate stress.
Engage in regular physical activities, as exercise can help regulate cortisol levels.
Yeah, we can't stress enough the importance of regular exercise and plenty of non-exercise physical activity for aging well.
Aim for a mix of cardiovascular exercise, strength training, and flexibility exercises. Exercise across the training continuum.
And keep to the moderate side. Excessive and intensive exercise can lead to disruptions to cortisol levels.
I'm assuming because it's the readiness hormone, ideally we should be having people exercise first thing in the morning, since the cortisol levels would be a little higher, correct?
Well, it will help raise the cortisol levels. And it's not necessarily perfectly important when we exercise during the day. It's probably better when we don't exercise, which is late at night is not the best time to exercise. But that being said, my recommendation for anyone looking at maintaining healthy cortisol levels and exercising for the health benefits and for aging well would be to exercise when you can. And for me, that's going to be first thing in the morning. I have to exercise at that time because if I don't, there's a good likelihood that I'm not going to have the opportunity to exercise later in the day. For other people, they might have to get up early, get to work. Afternoon is going to be better. We know also that our strength tends to be greatest about midday and then earlier in the evening, right around dinner time. And that's just because we have more food energy circulating in our bodies, and our bodies are also a little bit more warmed. So I wouldn't worry about when, just I think it'd be as important to have a consistent workout pattern more so than when you work out during the day. Does that make sense?
Kind of, because it's kind of contradictory, because you're like, it's not when, it's more when we don't. But then at the same time, if we were to work out in the evening, we are spiking that cortisol level. And so that's, again, going through the pattern of throwing off that circadian rhythm, is it not?
Not horribly so. I mean, again, if I work out, say around dinner time, like right after work before I eat my dinner, that's not going to be so bad because we have time to unwind before going to bed. Where we don't want to exercise is right before bed, go upstairs, shower, and get into bed because it's going to disrupt our sleep patterns. A little bit earlier in the day, you still have time to unwind. It may not be the most ideal, but again, our lives, modern lives, are not ever perfectly ideal to our health. We want to do as much as we can to manage a healthy lifestyle to age well.
What about diet?
Well, consume a well-balanced diet with adequate nutrients, including whole grains, lean proteins, fruits, and vegetables. We have suggested in several episodes the healthy benefits of a more Mediterranean diet. We also want to avoid excessive caffeine intake, especially in the afternoons and evenings. Stay hydrated by drinking enough water throughout the day and limit our intake of refined sugars.
Maintain a strong social support system. A positive social interaction can help reduce stress. Practice relaxation techniques such as progressive muscle relaxation or guided imagery to help calm the mind and body. We often talk about journaling and starting the day with some self care. This should also include some time spent planning and organizing the day to reduce feelings of being overwhelmed.
So you tend to do that, don't you? You've talked in previous episodes about how you kind of prioritize what you need to get done during the day. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what I do is if I kind of at the end of every single day, I write a list of what I need to get done for the next day. And I write that out before I go home. That way I'm not overthinking or I'm not stressing and I'm not like, oh man, did I forget something? I got to get this done. I have it, I get it done before I leave. And then when I go home, it allows me time to rest. And then when I wake up, I get back to work. And then instead of me trying to remember every little thing, I've already have it written down. And then what I do is I just kind of check those items off. Now, I work in kind of a little bit more hectic, fast-paced environment where there's a lot of interruptions throughout the day. So I kind of go off of I can't remember the name of it, but I go off of if it's urgent and if it has high priority, I bump that to the top of the list.
That's Stephen Covey.
Yeah. If it's not that urgent, it's not that high of a priority, well, then that goes to the bottom of the list, but it slowly moves to the top of the list for the next day because it still needs to get done and it's still something that needs to happen. Another thing, what I used to do, it was really funny. I used to write sticky notes for myself and I still do every now and then. And I don't know what it is, but it's something is once you get something done, removing that sticky note off. And as the day goes on, your little work area becomes cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And you're kind of cleaning and getting stuff done at the exact same time. And I don't know if it's a psychological thing, but for me, it really helps and keeps me motivated because it's like, all right, one more thing, getting out of here, getting done.
So part of that practicing relaxation techniques is having a personalized plan to be able to manage your day in a way that's going to be less stressful. And that's different approaches for different people. We got to find what works for us. And I mentioned Stephen Covey. I do like that approach to kind of prioritizing your day. I have a little less of a formal approach to that, but I still try and, okay, these are the most important things. This doesn't need to get done. I could push that aside. I think we've talked in the past about productive procrastination. And I honestly, I can't remember the name of the author. I'm going to have to maybe put the link in to that episode to go back when we talk about that. But with productive procrastination, we're putting off the things that are really not important that we get done right now. We're prioritizing the most important things right now. And basically his approach is a little bit similar to Covey. He adds some additional steps in there, but it's find that thing that works for you to make your day as less stressful as possible and as rewarding and be able to unwind at the end of the day. So we're not going to bed at the end of the day stressing about what we need to do tomorrow.
Well, I also think with some aspects of procrastination, when you procrastinate to the last minute on certain items or certain tasks, I think that's where cortisol, especially when it puts you in that little fight or flight, it can kind of benefit you in certain aspects. We all did it in college. We would wait till the last minute and we'd get a study session.
I never did.
Yeah.
I didn't. When I was in college, and it's one of the benefits I had of going to WVU. That was one of the number one party schools at the time. And I worked, I had my classes and I had a lot of social activities. I would say that, the work that I did later on in college wasn't the best for my sleep patterns because I worked at a bar as a bouncer and then I'd have to be up late and get up early for classes, but I still had a fairly regular sleep pattern and I was exercising regularly, but I got stuff done as soon as I could. So I managed my time and didn't procrastinate. And I had instructors that talked about, when you're studying for a test, the night before the test, and I'm sure I told you this as a student, I tell it in every class, the night before the test, you should be getting to bed early or do something relaxing, go have, as my instructors at WVU would tell us, go have a beer, go to a movie, do something relaxing. And then when you go to bed, your brain is processing the information for that exam. You're actually preparing your mind better for the exam than if you're staying up late. And if I'm staying up late, kind of struggling to get to a term paper, I'm not going to do my best work. And so there are times for productive procrastination, but there are also unproductive periods of procrastination. And so, again, having a schedule that's going to make you the least stressed, can allow you to get regular sleep and not be stressing about what you have coming up. You should be feeling much more relaxed. So I never put off the studying until the last night. And I was always much more relaxed. I'd go into the test and it was just like crank out my answers and get the heck out of there.
Some people like that little competition with themselves, though. They need that fire. Now, it's self-inflicted fire, but...
And is that necessarily healthy?
It's not necessarily healthy.
Yeah. Again, it's going to disrupt those cortisol cycles.
Yeah,
and so one of the reasons, and we often blame weight gain in college on dorm food and all of that, but how much of that may be due to, obviously increased alcohol consumption, lack of sleep, lack of exercise and diet, but also simply a disruption of our cortisol levels while we're stressing out about classes and work and many other things.
Yeah, especially the freshman year, you're away from your family and your friends, and you're taken out of your lifestyle that you grew up 17, 18, or 19 years of your entire life, and you're placed in an area where you're on your own. And that holds a whole nother factor. I would like to say my weight gain my freshman year was the late night pizzas. I had access to that little backstage area at Western. They called it the backstage, and they served pizza, and it was like $5 for a giant pizza with all those toppings. And I was like, this is the best deal ever. I'd get that and take that to my dorm. Yeah, it was bad.
I can also say I did not gain weight through college. In fact, I lost weight. I got leaner throughout college.
Yeah, I did not. I got big.
Well, let's get back on track.
All right. So speaking of cortisol levels and having to regulate it, what about supplements? I know some studies have shown that vitamin D may help reduce cortisol levels. What are your thoughts on that?
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. Well, again, we tend not to promote supplements on the Aging Well podcast. We tend to favor a healthy, well-balanced diet. But obviously, vitamin D is one of those supplements that can be of benefit if we are especially deficient of vitamin D. There are some herbs such as ashwagandha and rhodiola, which are the so-called adaptogens or adaptogenic herbs. These are purported to help the body adapt to stress. And I'm not convinced, but I do take a hopefully skeptical stance regarding these. But I have found it helpful to start the day with a glass of salt and lime water. That is an 8 to 12 ounce glass of water with about a tablespoon of lime juice. Lemon juice works as well. And a quarter teaspoon of colored salt.
Colored salt?
Yeah, pink salt like Himalayan or Celtic sea salt. Colorful salts are full of healthy minerals. It is a morning kickstart that I learned from Charles Poliquin. I'll leave a link in the episode description. The beverage is purported to have a threefold benefit. It aids in digestion, and better digestion means better absorption of nutrients, so maybe vitamin D. It also benefits the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Remember that the adrenal glands produce more than 50 hormones, including cortisol. And lastly, the lime or citrus fruit is high in vitamin C and are purported to be liver protective. The lime juice supports glutathione production, and this plays an important role in liver detoxification pathways.
There are a lot of my research that I've done with my own personal thing as far as liver goes. If you are taking lemon or lime juice first thing in the morning, it does help with detoxification, but it also helps regulate cortisol levels throughout the day as well. So I kind of stand behind what you're saying. And also, as far as ashwagandha goes, I have admitted I used to have really, really bad anxiety, and probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I started taking ashwagandha on a regular, and it kind of just, whether it was a placebo effect or not, it did help regulate. I was able to, things that felt overwhelming just didn't really feel as overwhelming. It was a lot more maintainable, and I could kind of control. I felt like I had more control over my parasympathetic system. Like my heart wasn't racing all the time, and I wasn't so overwhelmed where I had to control my breathing. It was more, I don't know. It was just, hey, this is the situation I'm in, and I can handle this.
So it reduces the stress levels, which is going to affect cortisol. And again, the lime juice is going to support the glutathione production, which is going to keep our liver a little bit healthier.
Glutathione may also have anti-melogenic and anti-aging effects.
Glutathione decreases with age. It makes one more susceptible to the damaging effects of stress. So this may underscore the importance of cortisol rhythm and the benefits of this salt and lime concoction when we attempt to age well.
Of course, the listener should consult with a healthcare professional before using any supplements. And if stress and cortisol levels are consistently high, consider seeking support from a healthcare professional or therapist. Is there anything else?
Well, again, we want to manage cortisol rhythm throughout the day. So do things that will kickstart cortisol in the morning and bring levels down at night. To do this, we should reduce exposure to screens, smartphones, iPads, television, etc., especially before bedtime, as excessive screen time can interfere with sleep. If you like to read before bed, paper copies of books are better choices than Kindles. If you do read electronically, I'd recommend switching to the night screen. We also want to remember to incorporate mindfulness practices into our daily routine, such as mindful breathing or mindful eating.
Hey, what's your opinion on the glasses that block out the blue lights from screens?
Again, that's going to have a benefit as well. But when it really comes down to it, what are we getting from that screen time? What are we watching? If it's something that is going to be more relaxing, then, that the blue light glasses are going to help you a little bit more. But if it's something like, we're watching the news or we're scrolling through Facebook or social media, things that might elevate some of that anxiety or stir our mind a bit prior to sleep, it's probably not the best thing, whether or not we use the glasses or not. The key is to do something that is going to ready your mind and your body for sleep. And so, reading something that is going to be relaxing, positive, not really negative. Don't read horror stories. Don't read Stephen King at night. I love reading Stephen King, but don't do it right before bed because that's going to disrupt your sleep. Read something that's going to be much more mindful, meditative, and get you prepared for sleep.
It's so crazy that even light itself can affect our cortisol levels. My wife and I, we have some lamps in our room, and one of the lamps were burning out, and we were using just the typical daylight lamps. And it was flickering. So I went to the store and I bought 2 more lamps, and they had LED lights on sale. They were way cheaper than, so I was like, oh, I'll just go with that. And we put those in, and you can't really relax in the room anymore. It's not a relaxing feeling going from those daylight or natural light looking lamps to more of that LED style. It kind of just, you kind of feel like you're in a doctor's office. It's really weird. And we don't think about that.
And standard fluorescent bulbs aren't good either. I mean, ideally, you want to light the room with as much natural light as possible. Right. But of course, we're in the middle of winter right now. Days are shorter. You're going to have times where you're going to need lighting. But probably the most ideal thing would be to ramp up your lighting in the morning to get you awakened and stir the body, get that initial cortisol response. And as we go toward our bedtime, we're starting to kind of gradually dim the lights and bring that lighting down to a pattern where our body's experiencing that it's nighttime. We need to be sleeping rather than being awake. A lot of people crank up all the lights at night because it's dark outside and we need more light in the room. That's not necessarily the best pattern to get ourselves ready for sleep. We don't want to have that light on next to the bed and flick it off and then try and go to sleep, because we're not going to get to sleep as quickly as if we gradually kind of dim the lights down and prepare our minds and bodies for sleep.
So obviously, with us being exercise scientists, what are your thoughts on exercise and how it affects cortisol levels?
Well, in the long run, I mean, obviously there's the short-term benefits of it. It's going to help break down fat. It helps release energy. It helps us actually to exercise more effectively. We're going to see cortisol levels actually increase during an exercise session. But with that, we also see testosterone increase to help facilitate more protein synthesis. But I think one of the interesting things that we see with the stress response in response to chronic exercise, regular exercise, is that those stress hormones actually decrease. The amount that is being produced for a given stimulus is going to be less. So like we see epinephrine and norepinephrine, or what people often think of as adrenaline, being released during a stressful situation. But with exercise, the amount that's released under that same heightened response is going to be less. And what that allows for us is to be able to elevate that response, and potentially, if the threat is greater, we can, exceed the response or increase the response. And I often tell my exercise science students, and you've probably heard this story a few times as a student of mine, when I took some students to Dominican University in San Rafael, California. Our hotel was in not the best side of town, because it was a kind of cheaper hotel. And I'm walking to the conference very early in the morning. I'm in an unfamiliar area. So, you don't know what threats may be there. I mean, it wasn't really that bad of an area, but you never quite know. And so I'm kind of walking to the conference and I hear somebody running up behind me. And this is early in the morning. I'm in an unfamiliar area and I feel myself kind of tensing up. My muscles contracting, my heart rate going up a little bit. I'm sure my blood pressure went up a little bit. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this guy much, much smaller than me run by carrying some grocery bags. Obviously not a threat at all. And so what I often tell my students is I had that kind of embarrassing fight or flight response, but because I was in shape and I am in shape, I have the capacity to elevate that response a little bit more. So if I had turned and it was a much more significant threat, I always use the example of Dwayne Johnson wielding a knife at me, then I can further elevate that response. If I'm out of shape and I have a less controllable sympathetic response or fight or flight response, I'm going to turn, oh crap, it's a bigger threat, and I can have a heart attack. And so that's one of the important aspects of bringing these hormone levels down, is because if the needed response is greater than what we anticipate, we can actually elevate it. And if we have chronically high cortisol levels, our body is constantly at that maximal stress level, and we don't have a capacity to elevate that further should there be a demand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So it's kind of like like certain positions on a football field, right? You see a quarterback who they have to maintain a level of calm, cool collectedness. Otherwise, they're going to make some mistakes or some errors. But then you have the linemen that are right up in front. They have to spike their stress levels. Because they're in a battle right then and there. They're fighting the entire time. But if they maintain that cool, calm collectiveness, well, then they're going to get they're going to get blown through, and the quarterback's going to get sacked. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, I think that's a little bit more psychological than hormonal, but I would think if you probably tracked the hormonal levels, like cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine levels of those athletes in particular situations, you'd see that, again, the quarterback is going to tend to have a much steadier response. The offensive lineman is probably going to likely see relatively short spikes in their cortisol levels as they get up to the line, depending on the play, depending on their responsibilities, depending on, the individual coming at them. And so it is important that we are able to sustain our appropriate levels of cortisol throughout the day. And again, I would add to that the epinephrine, norepinephrine, the other hormones. I mean, even insulin and glucagon, growth hormone, all the hormones that are basically regulating our bodies throughout the day should have a capacity to regulate that with the least amount of hormone being released, so that when the demand increases, we don't have to spike those hormones too much to trigger a little bit better response.
That kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, it kind of does. Well, you said it's more physiological than psychological, but I would say you're right. But I would also say that with that psychological aspect, you can kind of lower that parasympathetic, empathetic, that heart rate. You can say, okay, I'm fine. I'm good. You can kind of calm yourself down. Very similar to your story about the gentleman who was significantly smaller than you that was running with his grocery bags. Once you assess the situation and realize that it wasn't a threat, it wasn't danger, you probably were able to control your breathing and lower your heart rate. But in that unknown of, oh my gosh, is it Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wielding a giant machete chasing me down? No, you don't know. So because you didn't know, and your psychological mind put you in a situation that was far more dangerous than it actually was, your body had a physiological effect, right?
Well,
it had a response.
And again, it goes to underscoring what we've been talking about in terms of having relaxation techniques and doing things that are going to keep our cortisol level steady and in that proper rhythm. That part of that comes from our psychological control. Part of it comes from our physiological habits. What are we eating? How are we exercising? How are we affecting our body to control those cortisol levels?
Perfect. So to summarize this, cortisol, known as the readiness hormone, can prepare you for any situation that you're in that is high in stress. However, although it is a helpful tool to help with that, it is very beneficial for us to limit the amount of cortisol spikes throughout the day. We can do this by getting on a good sleep pattern, making healthy lifestyle choices, such as adding a to-do list at the end of our day or beginning of our day, limiting the amount of screen time we have in the evenings, and watching the caffeine intake later on in the day. If you have concerns about weight gain or abdominal fat, consult a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian for personalized guidance and support. Remember, managing stress, adopting a healthy lifestyle, incorporating regular physical activities, and maintaining a balanced diet are essential for overall well-being and can help mitigate the impact of cortisol on belly fat accumulation and help you to
age well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.